What do you get when you have an anime with fine directing, great animation, and completely garbage writing? You get the best anime of all times, since anime fans don't care about the script as they do about pretty colors. You can give them complete shit and they will ask for more as long as it looks nice. If it doesn't, that is the only thing they will find to bitch about. Terror in Resonance is an example of this, since it was hailed by most as the anime of the century when it was still airing for those exact reasons. I was never fooled, of course, since I care about the script and no amount of pretty colors could hide the dozens of problems it had since the very beginning. Hell, I knew before it even began airing that it would be bad. The Noitanima time slot never produced a good sci-fi or mystery or supernatural anime. They are good only at romances for middle-aged women. Plus the trailers showed a couple of snotty-looking teenagers blowing up buildings while talking to cell phones. How hard was it to smell the failure? Did everybody forget Eden of the East already? I was openly stating the problems it had throughout its airing period, and I was one of the very few who dared to do so, since everybody was ready to hate and mock those who didn't like it. The reason of their denial towards these obvious problems was the director. There is no way Watanabe can mess up. Watanabe is God. Well, damn, he did. What a shock. Can we please stop losing our shit every time his name pops up? The guy made one super successful show, followed by a so-so show, followed by a run-of-the-mill romance, followed by random fan service episodes. And now he made this unfortunate piece of work, but very few wanted to admit it because Watanabe is God and those who disagree are trolls. The theme of terrorism in the show may be bullshit, but the pillow-hugging anime community sure is terrified to admit obvious problems and sure is quick to scare away critical thinkers. Speaking of themes, the show keeps trying to fool you it's about terrorism because it's right there in the title, and the two main characters' nicknames are an allusion to 9/11, and that is supposed to be all it takes to say there is terrorism in the show. Let's disregard how there was no political statement behind the bombings until the final episode. If they had a statement to make, they would have revealed it right away, something which of course they didn't, because that way the show would end in 2 episodes. So instead of that, they hid it until the finale and made it seem like it was all nonsense. The very fact that these two so-called terrorists made sure nobody would be killed in the explosions and only target buildings make them hooligans. What they're doing are acts of vandalism. Since the only demands they had up until then was expecting from the police to solve riddles, the whole thing felt like children fooling around with people's lives. Here is a game, follow the rules, have fun as the adults chase you around. And even if we assume terrorism doesn't need a political statement to exist and that simply scaring people is enough, not even that happens because nobody is scared of the bombings. As if the characters' reactions weren't enough, not even the setting manages to absorb you despite the pretty amazing animation. Yeah, it looks like the real world, but only on a very superficial way. As soon as the science gets in the way, nothing makes sense. Also, besides one smart cop, everybody else in this show is unable to do basic research. We live in the age of information where you can Google something and find the answer to any riddle in seconds. Better yet, you can have tens of millions of people worldwide looking into it. One of them can solve it for you. The riddles are also not super smart, they are based on existing myths. Everybody can solve them by a simple visit at Wikipedia, and yet nobody in the whole world, besides one cop, is able to do such a simple thing. And holy crap, how can anyone take the show seriously if it makes the police to act like complete idiots? And I don't simply mean being unable to solve the riddles with a simple visit at Wikipedia. They can't even make the most basic profiling with the evidence they have so far. I understand this is done purely for making the main characters seem super smart, when in reality they are just average people amongst retards. But damn, this is insulting your intelligence when they keep saying the show is realistic and mature. Even the single cop who has brains is unable to do the obvious, despite knowing early on that all he needs to do is look into a myth to find the answer to a riddle. He doesn't do so until out of nowhere he looks at a guy playing a video game and saying completely irrelevant things. He then magically finds the solution. This is not how actual detectives do their work. They do not look at something irrelevant and all of a sudden light bulbs appear on their heads. They use facts and information they have in front of them in order to logically solve a mystery with simple deduction procedures. The way things are revealed in this show are not limited to lame eureka moments, but also to lazy exposition methods. They constantly do that annoying thing where they have to state the obvious, or point at things and ask, "What is that?" for more info dump to take place by talking instead of showing stuff. They do the same thing with the background stories of all major characters. We never get a clear flashback of what happened in their lives, only glimpses of past events, and even those appear at random intervals. We only get someone monologuing about them for 10 minutes and that's it. Although this method serves its purpose, it is very slapped on. It lacks talent and effort and passes as very amateurish for a story that is supposed to be a mystery that is slowly revealing itself. It feels like it's not about connecting the dots and examining clues, but more like revealing stuff the characters knew all along and don't tell us about it because we have a dozen episodes that need to be filled somehow. Instead of stating the obvious, let's waste entire episodes in briefings where we talk about scientifically incorrect mumbo-jumbo that mean nothing in the long run. All that led to characters that are not remotely interesting. None of them had something special for you to care about them. It was the mystery of the riddles surrounding the characters that felt intriguing, not them. Since most of the show was wasted on silly riddle solving and stuff blowing up, there was never much time invested in the cast. Most of what we know about them comes from boring monologues, and most of the motives are revealed too late in the story to mean anything by then. 9 and 12 feel like they were fooling around and rendering most of what happens in the show pointless. They could simply hack into the police archives and give them all the information they needed to investigate the place they wanted them to go to. They could threaten to blow up the city with the nuclear device they stole in the beginning of the series in case they were not taken seriously. Hell, they could have simply detonated the device and hacked into the archives afterwards, thus making their point and still not killing anyone. But instead of doing something so simple, they spent the whole show blowing up buildings and throwing around riddles. They try to excuse it as if they wanted to gather the attention of the world before actually revealing the truth, but that is bullshit. A nuclear bomb is more than enough to attract everybody's attention. I mean, what would the media around the world do if they had a huge explosion over Japan? Ignore it because some punks weren't blowing up buildings before that? Lisa did absolutely nothing in the plot besides causing trouble. She was there only to be kidnapped or assaulted every 10 minutes, so the not really terrorists had to constantly endanger their plans to save her, just so she can take up space in their apartment and poison them with her awful cooking. She was a hindrance, existing to simply waste episodes by being in them. Many tasteless casuals kept yelling about how she represents the average teenager who is bullied and wants to see the world burn, and how she is the eyes of the viewer, and how the drama with her mother was very touching, and how she was supposed to be the human factor to keep 9 and 11 sane, and to have a cute romance going on with them, and lots of other bullshit that mean nothing in the long run, since she was just a lobotomized askman as well as a damsel in distress. Awful tropes can only result to awful characters. 5 was presented right away as a one-dimensional psychotic bitch we are supposed to hate. She was somehow allowed by the American secret agencies to go around doing hideous things, which somehow would help them capture the other two. Well, guess what? Not only they failed to do so, but the stupid bitch was causing more trouble than helping them in their work. She completely shattered whatever plausibility the show had by basically making the police place bombs, blow up civilian areas, and making the not really terrorists to run around for hours while playing chess with completely broken rules instead of just capturing them. She knows who they are and where they are, but doesn't just send the police to capture them, she bombs the place, thus erasing all tracks of them while still failing to stop them. And of course, she never gets arrested for causing more damage than the actual threat, because we need to stretch the story even more. And when finally shit hits the fan, she just says it was all a game, shoots her colleague, and kills herself. Well, that was pointless. By the time she was out of the picture, there was more damage than good accomplished. Also, half of the show was wasted because of her, since she was doing nothing but constantly derailing the plot from its main objective, thus constantly taking away time from character fleshing out and world building. The tasteless casuals keep yelling how she is representing the evil version of the two good terrorists and what they would have become if they hadn't escaped, meaning she was there only to make the cartoony evil organization to seem even more cartoonishly evil. Shibazaki is a cool fellow, and the most promising of the bunch, but he too eventually becomes nothing but a plot device to keep the story going. Because somebody needs to solve the riddles and somebody needs to be the smart counterpart that will be opposing the terrorists. The tasteless casuals keep saying that he was vital in exposing the plans of the evil organization by solving the riddles, but come on, that's bullshit. The riddles were pointless, and as soon as the secret agency with a stupid bitch 5 popped into the story, he became just a passive observer. Once the nuclear explosion happened and everybody was looking into what happened, his investigation was meaningless since there was no way the truth could be hidden anymore. There are also lots of side characters, each one serving an interesting side story to further flesh out the cast, but are left as nothing but decorations. This includes people like Lisa's crazy mother, or Shibazaki's daughter, or the politician who orchestrated the experiments on children. We could have more focus on them, but didn't because the show went for dumb riddles and big explosions. So it all comes back to what I said in the beginning. The show is ruined because it is trying to be taken seriously when it is made to be flashy and entertaining. It is not good at being about terrorism or grey morality or some metaphor for what is going on in Japanese politics right now. It's a rule of cool show about two brats making adults look bad, while the population doesn't care if they are blowing up buildings. It's about them laughing while escaping the authorities on their cool bikes. It's about them outsmarting the police because they are good at playing chess, even if the animators don't even know the rules of the game. It's about their nemesis being a shallow, psychotic, narcissistic schoolgirl that the audience is meant to hate right away. It's about the Japanese politicians thinking that the best way for Japan to get over its losing mentality from World War II is to return back into thinking they are the masters of Asia and threatening the world with their hidden nuclear arsenal. All that are not deeper or smarter than watching an average fighting shonen where a bunch of stupid boys solve their problems by punching things. Do you know how much actual plot this show has if you take out all the flashy extras? If you remove 5, it doesn't need more than a movie's worth of duration to tell the whole thing. If you remove the pointless riddles, it doesn't take more than a couple of episodes. The characters were literally overcomplicating everything with pointless riddles and bombings and running in airports and saving useless schoolgirls. Instead of offering character fleshing out and world building, we got 90% filler, a plot that makes no sense and doesn't delve into its themes. All you will be remembering from Terror in Resonance are explosions, some weird riddles, and cool camera angles. If that is all it matters to you in order to call a show good, then you have a really shitty taste.
Zankyo no Terror is probably the best anime of the year.
It is a better show to your average harem, but calling it a good detective story about terrorism? Not even close to that. Before it, even a semi-guilty pleasure like V for Vendetta is a masterpiece of storytelling. Zankyo no Terror is a candidate for the best show of the year along with Noragami. Not Mushishi, not Ping Pong, not Waycross, not Parasite, Noragami! Your credibility is lost just by saying such things, you know. So is when you insist on calling a show something that it only pretends to be about. And by that, I of course mean the whole terrorism theme. Just because it's on the title and just because the main characters call themselves terrorists, it doesn't mean that there is such a thing in this show. Because in case you didn't know, the act of terrorism is aiming to terrorize the population, something which never ever happens in this show. Everybody looks puzzled than scared, and since nobody is ever killed, it's not even terrifying. In other words, the show is fucking pretentious for treating its theme as a joke.
I am a terrorist.
What kind of terrorist?
A terrifying terrorist.
Then there is the whole issue of realism. Most anime fans presume that if something looks detailed, then it's realistic, when this is way too far from what real actually means. There is nothing scientifically accurate about this show. Everything looks flashy but plays out in a completely fake way, from how security works to the effects of nuclear explosions.
But you're all bone.
It's a flesh wound.
Then we have the characters who many liked because they felt like average people and had a mysterious past to keep you intrigued. That's not enough to have good characters. None of them were fleshed out properly. They were fairly stereotypical and their mysterious past had no purpose to be hidden. Also, the whole mystery and riddle solving aspects in the show were completely superficial. Keeping things in the dark just for the sake of tension is destroying characterization, since the characters are not good as personalities but rather as question marks. Most of the show gets wasted on revealing who they are, not whom they can become. Their appeal is instantly lost when you know all there is to know about them, and on top of that, the story kills them off at the end. Plus, the riddles were completely pointless. They could have just hacked into the police archives to give them all the info about that human experiment project, and then detonate the nuclear bomb to attract the attention of the world, all of which wouldn't take more than a couple of episodes to happen. This, in effect, makes 80% of the show to be nothing but filler and misdirection towards things that don't matter. Of course, most didn't realize that. They just took everything at face value and assumed because the show looks nice and calls itself a psychological thriller, then it has to be an amazing one. Do these people even know of Death Note or 20th Century Boys? Subtlety and quality are completely lost to them if all it takes is listening to a song that makes them cry, or it has big explosions. They don't care about proper writing or presentation. They automatically consider those parts done perfectly just because externally it looks polished.
This was a very, very, very good series. This episode makes me gain more faith in the anime industry and shows they still care about plot, story, characters, and atmosphere.
Fuck you! And the worst part is that they don't understand it when I explain it to them in detail. You can find my review of the show in the description, and it is the same I posted on Reddit. As you can see, they didn't like it. All of which happened while there is a notification by the admins begging the anime fans to stop spamming the anime section with best girl pictures, which get thousands of likes apiece. I even commented individually on topics about its obvious problems with as few words as possible so they can get it, and they downvoted me. As for their replies, they were all claiming I didn't watch the show or I didn't understand its amazing depth, that even an amateur can get it. It's like they are systematically scaring you away from trying to be critical.
Silence! I kill you!
But don't worry, no matter how much they try to silence me with their downvoting, I will never stop. I will keep educating you so you won't become like these tasteless casuals who can't tell left from right.
Are you my virgins? I hope not. Why? There's a bunch of ugly-ass guys out there.
Oh, and thumbs up to DigiBro for admitting he was wrong about the show being good. He's still young and easily fooled by hype, so nowhere near as good as I am. But it takes huge balls to go 180 on your opinions and disagree with the majority. Keep up the good work by becoming more like me. In fact, you should all become like me. And we're back to hating Zankyo no Terror, with the issue this time being those who didn't like the show because they were too narrow-minded to understand its theme. Who really meets the point here? Those who didn't understand the theme or those who did? On a very superficial level, you can say that those who got it are of course on the right, simply because they got it. But how did they get it? How come they saw the social critique on Japanese politics and others didn't? The show itself definitely didn't openly say it or show it, so many perceived the anime to be an action thriller with mystery. On the other hand, others claim it is clearly there when the Athena project is explained, which is a metaphor for what the Japanese Prime Minister is doing right now. And here is where the whole problem exists. Some didn't see past the anime, while others did. Who is to blame for that? It would seem like some were idiots who missed the obvious social message. But then you wonder, what were those people watching for 11 episodes if it wasn't the obvious social message? And the answer is, they were watching two snotty teenagers blowing up buildings, throwing around riddles on videos, and running around on cool motorbikes while avoiding the police. This happens for about 80% of the whole show, whereas the Athena project is briefly mentioned for a few minutes. So how can you blame the viewers who focused on what the show was mostly showing them than to what it barely mentioned? Also notice that whatever real-world socio-political implications the show had didn't matter one bit in the setting of the anime. Not only the message was barely given any screen time, but it was also never looked into. What effects did these issues have for the population? Not only they're not shown to care, but also the anime ends without even bothering to show us the after effects of the explosion and the reveal of the Athena project. So again, how can you blame the viewers who are having fun watching riddles and bombings going on the foreground and not paying attention to some overlooked message in the background nobody seemed to care about? The fans of the show can claim that everybody could have figured all that from the goal of the main characters. The show didn't have to say it if the actions of the characters clearly proved all that, just like all series with good exposition are supposed to do. But again, how much did the anime spend on the character backgrounds or their motivations to make everybody understand all that? Yes, everything is revealed in the last episodes, but what about the rest of the show? The characters were mystery boxes with no clear goals and spent their time being cool while bombing stuff and outsmarting the police. The audience was made to perceive them as cool, not tragic. The fans will also say that the show is not for impatient people who want everything explained in the first episode, or where the character backdrops are more important than the actual characters. Once again, how can the audience feel the need to pay attention to the socio-political message if the main characters do stuff like bombings and riddles that have absolutely nothing to do with the message and where the population doesn't seem to care? A show that did all of the above properly is welcome to the NHK because it was always focused on its main characters. We knew what their problem was since the very beginning. The whole series was also a socio-political critique. It didn't hide it, it was obvious from the very start. It also had some very trippy visuals, but they were never there for the rule of cool like the explosions and the riddles of Zankyou no Terror. Everything had to do with the mentality of the characters. Everything in that show was about personal investment on the characters, which in turn reflected the message it wanted to say. Compared to all that, Zankyou no Terror did nothing. It spent so much time on detailed visuals, big explosions and cryptic riddles, while completely failing to make the characters relatable on a personal level. They were nothing but mystery boxes with just a few personality quirks to define them as nothing more than overused stereotypes. And its message was never addressed up until the show was about to end. On top of that, the series demands from the viewer to be aware of the political state of Japan at the time it was airing. As I stated several times in the past, no show that demands external information to make sense is well written. No matter how much it wants to talk about issues of the real world, it must still be self-contained by addressing them within the show. Zankyou no Terror didn't do that. And that had nothing to do with realism in presentation. Something high on fiction, such as the Gundam franchise, still manages to show right away that it's about war and how it affects its characters, despite being full of giant robots and space colonies. Despite the high fidelity of our world, Zankyou no Terror tries to address the loser mentality of Japan and how pride drives its politicians to go for inhumane acts. But you never see all that reflected on the people of that setting. In fact, they seem happy and content with their lives. In other words, the anime is completely contradictory in what it wants to say and how it shows it. Looking back in previous years, there were lots of shows which failed for the same reasons. Remember a show called See, the Money of Soul and Possibility Control? It was also animated nicely and was clearly a social critique on the value of money and how it affects the lives of people. Yet when you watch it, all you see is episodic Pokemon battles. They are supposed to show how the stock market can alter reality, and they mostly spend their time in these completely ridiculous proxy battles with half-naked women and one-episode opponents. There was also Bento, which was obviously about how far are poor people willing to go for gathering enough to survive another day. That message was also lost amongst fights with sexy girls. And who can forget the thought-provoking message of Sword Art Online, which was clearly about people having serious relationships even in virtual reality. And yet, the writing was so bad that we end up remembering that anime for anything else past that important message. So, going back to the initial question, who really misses the point? Those who watched the show for what it was showing them, or those who thought 2 minutes worth of talking about an overlooked theme is super deep? Finding a meaning to something is the easiest thing to do. It can be anything about anyone as long as you have a vivid imagination. What really matters from the perspective of the anime is if by itself shows you what it's about, not to figure it out only by watching the news. And it also matters how that affects the characters, not to keep everything a harmless mystery nobody really cares about. I appreciate shows which don't reveal everything right away, but not when they don't bother to make the revelation important by the time it appears. Down to it, Zankyou fans ain't really any better than Soutards. They believe they like a show for reasons that many others are too narrow-minded to get it, and they completely miss the point in how the message is presented in such a bad way that the only thing most notice are the fancy visuals and the cool explosions.